In this segment on removing striker pneumatics, these are the striker pneumatics, I'm going to show you what I believe is perhaps the second most popular method of removing them from the tier, and that is with heat. Of course, as before, the first thing you want to do is you want to mark. Uh, you want to number the bellows, preferably someplace that'll be hidden once the unit is put back together. I usually mark them here in this section where the finger goes, the striker finger goes. Some people advocate marking them on the inside, because as you'll see, these two pieces are going to come apart when the hinge gets replaced. And as you might remember from yesterday, I marked them on the bottom. Forgot to mark this one. So they'll be marked on the top and the bottom in places that won't be visible once the unit's put back together. I've already got the iron started. It's just a regular clothes iron. It's an old one, as you can tell by looking at the face of it there. And I've got it set on the highest heat. I advocate the use of dry heat to heat the bellows off, as opposed to wet heat or steam heat. The steam heat would not be applied like a steam iron. Right? If I was going to use steam heat, which I have used, you would get a terry cloth towel and then get it very wet, almost dripping wet, and then take the terry cloth towel between the part that you want to remove and the iron, and then put it on there and create a whole bunch of steam. The problem with steam heat, especially on the smaller bellows like this, is warpage. This is the first step in removing the bellows with heat. Got to cut them open. And I'm going to show you something else here too. I'll show you something on the back side here. The reason that I'm doing so many of these is because, of course, of the size of the iron. You can do a whole bunch of them simultaneously. Sometimes it's easier just so that the face of the iron doesn't get all dirty. It's not a bad idea to go ahead and strip off the cloth. Just so that you don't get all that black rubber on the face of the iron. The method will work whether you do this or not, but it's just one of those things that helps keep your iron a little bit cleaner, so you don't have to clean it quite so much. Of course, you can see the contact area. You can see the contact area right here to here. And again, as you might remember, yesterday I marked the back. Okay, I marked the back of the bellows. I scored it along the back here to get the mark for that point. And again, you really need to mark the sides of the bellows, and it's not a bad idea, just as in the other method, to go ahead and mark these. I just thought about this. I don't know what that's doing to the picture in the camera when because I can see that the camera now, I didn't look at that yesterday. The camera's shaking. Didn't even think about that. But you can also score it like this. Anything that is going to leave a mark on there so that when it comes time to align these back up, that they're going to go back exactly where they came from. Or, as I had mentioned yesterday, I can't overemphasize the importance of making sure that these bellows get mounted back exactly where they came from. Has to do with the way that the striker fingers down here, the way that the striker's fingers align with the action of the piano, and you don't want these things, I mean, when they did it at the factory, they made sure that these things are perfectly straight up and down. So you want to make sure that you're going to be able to put the bellows back exactly where they came from. And the only way to do that is to mark them. I think that the iron's probably hot enough. And I haven't done any testing on this, so I really don't know how things are going to react. But before I get started, I wanted to show you one thing down here on the back side. On the back side of the assembly, you see you've got this gasket here. Now, this gasket's actually in really good shape. This is leather, and like I say, I mean, this gasket's in really good shape, and probably for the home rebuilder, you know, you're doing it one time, you're probably not going to change this. And you see in the area where I had removed the bellows before using the breaking them off method as opposed to the heating them off method, that this gasket is in perfect shape. We may see that when we apply the heat on here that it may have a tendency to damage this gasket, and we'll take a look at it afterwards. So that's one thing you got to bear in mind when using the heat method, is that, you know, you got a lot of heat around here. Probably 250 to 300 degrees at least, and that heat is going to radiate all around, and it might damage that gasket, so something you might want to bear in mind. Also, because of the fact that you're going to be right on top of these hinges, which are glued on, you should definitely plan on putting new hinges on. Here again, for the home rebuilder, you look at this one that we did yesterday. Yeah, that's a good strong hinge. You know, does it need to be changed? You know, it's hard to justify changing something that's not damaged. And it's not dry rot. I mean, obviously, if you take it apart and you find that the hinge is dry rotted, or if the bellow wiggles a lot right and left, you know, when you do this, it'd probably be a good idea to go ahead and change the hinge anyhow. But you can see this. This is a fairly thick woven cloth hinge. It's a pretty good shape. It's kind of hard to justify tearing that apart just to put new cloth on the bellow. I've had this on about a minute, and give myself a little room here to put the iron down. And what I do is I check to see how it feels, to see whether or not it's giving, and so far it's not giving at all. So we'll leave it on here for a little while longer. I'm sorry for the silence there, but there's not much to say. Because you just have to wait. Now, one of the reasons you might ask, well, you know, if you had such good luck using the method that you did before, the what I call the breaking them off method, you had real good luck with that method. You know, why even consider another method? And the fact of the matter is that they don't always come off. I mean, even when you're really, really careful trying to break them off, sometimes they just don't come off cleanly. I mean, and they just break to pieces. The wood breaks to pieces. I mean, I guess you could say, well, you go ahead and make replacement pieces. Yeah, I guess you could, but you know, I'm kind of a nut about using the original pieces if at all possible. You know, I don't as a matter of course just go ahead and start making new pieces because I've damaged the old pieces so badly that they can't be used again. And typically, you know, if I was starting to remove the bellows using the standard method, what I refer to as the standard method or the break them off method, and they just started breaking apart, I would only probably break 2 or 3 before I would look for another method, all right? Because I just don't want to break things up. You know, I just don't want to break the parts. So this is where I came up with this this second method. What we're trying to do here basically is just soften the glue. Animal hide glue does soften as it gets hot. In fact, I mean, it gets up to about 145 degrees and it turns liquid. Of course, once it's real dry and old like this, it might take a little more than 150 degrees to soften it to the point where it's just going to come apart. And obviously you could probably put on too much heat. And this is not cooperating. Because we're definitely up over 200 degrees. And still nothing happening here. So what I may end up doing is giving this a little help. Okay, it's starting to soften. Okay, and I'm just sliding this on through by hand, you see. And there it goes. Came off. And you can see this glue right here. This glue is soft. You notice how I was able to bend it. And of course, if it was hard, it would just crack. And it's not cracked, it's bending, which means that it's hot. Okay. And you see that we got a really nice clean surface right there. And you can go ahead and clean up the space by the next one. And go ahead and mark it again if you feel that's necessary. I don't know whether this is still hot enough that I can get that underneath there. It's not quite hot enough. It'll cool down fairly fast. Now I just got this one off, and of course now that it's off I can go ahead and number it. And just put it in the row with the rest of them. But as you can, I mean, if you've watched the previous video on breaking the pneumatics off, you can tell that this method does take longer, but as you can also tell, there's absolutely no breakage on here at all. It's nice and flat and smooth. And that, you know, I don't know whether that's such a blessing or not, though, you know, because of the fact that, as I had mentioned in the other video, when you've got those little pieces of wood that are stuck to the tier and the little pieces of missing wood on the other half, they work as an alignment. They work to help align. They work to help align the bellow when you go to put it back on. Being rather stubborn. Probably not hot enough yet. I don't want to pull up on this because if I pull up on it, not only is there the possibility of it cracking, but also the possibility of it warping. And it feels like it's pretty stuck right about here. So, and it's really not all that hot. So, I'm going to go ahead and apply a little more heat. I'm looking at right now I'm looking at the back of the gasket, and I got my finger in the hole just to see how much heat is coming out there, and there's not much heat coming out. So the gasket, so far the gasket doesn't appear to be contorting or warping or burning. It's been suggested by some people that an Unger heat gun might be useful in this application. The only problem is the Unger heat gun has two basic settings. They've got the low setting at 500 degrees and the high setting at 1,000 degrees. And you know, with all of this cloth and thin pneumatic cloth, and the fact that you've got a soft wood, I mean, this is poplar. Generally the striker pneumatics are made out of poplar. Yeah, the possibility of getting too much heat and starting to scorch things seems pretty real to me, and you know, I'd much rather spend a little bit more time and have a little bit more control as opposed to getting into a situation where things are happening so fast that that you end up accidentally burning something or warping something or starting a fire or something of that nature. I'd rather not have that problem. So there we go. Feels like it's going in now. Maybe not. So being pretty stubborn. They usually do. There it goes. There we go. See, this one actually, I mean, this is only about 1/1000th of an inch of wood that came off there. Very, very little wood that came off there. But and I'm putting my hand here to feel how hot this got. And actually, what the problem was in this case is that it really just didn't get hot enough. So we need to actually let that sit for a little bit longer than I let it sit previously. And I guess I could bring out a timer here and have a timer running so that I could tell exactly how long it was sitting. Just make sure that I've got a good mark on here. I don't think that there's much else to say. I can't think of anything else to say at this point. Just have to wait. Because once I actually go ahead and get the video uploaded or converted to upload it to YouTube, I'll actually be able to see how long how long it actually took. Because I'm thinking it's probably bordering on 3 minutes that I'm applying the heat. Might be more than that, might be 4. Sometimes when I'm talking and shooting the video at the same time, the seconds are going by pretty fast. So. But this will be the last one that I do. That way I'll get kind of an average as to how long it took to get them off. I'm applying a fair amount of pressure here. Sometimes that helps transfer the heat a little bit better. It really could have waited another, it really could have waited another 30 seconds or so before I did that, before I took it off. So anyhow, that's the heating them off method.